Hi everyone, it's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. I know you're saying, "Well, where have you been, Emil?" I've been taking care of myself. I had to go to a funeral. You know what it's like to go to a funeral and everyone looks like your grandparents. That's how I felt like. That's why I keep up my appearances. But no, it was fun. It was fun to, well, sad, but also fun to be with family. So I've been sort of in family mode for a couple days. And then I had to go to the dentist, and you know what it's like to go to the dentist. They drill you to death. But the news is a killer, right? And we got to talk about the Trump tariffs. We got to talk about China retaliating. We got to talk about all that, and we got to talk about this message that the Trump administration is giving to everyone: just leave, or we'll arrest you and put you away. Well, if you won't deport you, if we can't deport you, you got to self deport. We'll get you out, and even if you're not an immigrant, I mean, the real bottom line, the scary bottom line, if you read Justice Sotomayor's response to what Chief Justice Roberts put out yesterday on the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. He's the Salvadoran who mistakenly was deported, has no reason being deported, but he's now in a prison somewhere in well, we know what prison it is because the Trump administration outsources its prisons. They're in El Salvador, and but we don't know where Kilmar is, and all we know is that the Supreme Court says the government, given the mistake, has to facilitate his release from custody in El Salvador, but they didn't go into the details and they gave no deadline. So what does that mean? And Sotomayor said pretty much, he said, the government now requests an order from this court permitting it to leave Abrego Garcia, a husband and father without a criminal record, in a Salvadoran prison for no reason recognized by law. The only argument the government offers in support of its request is that the U.S. courts cannot grant relief once a deportee crosses the border. And Sotomayor says that's plainly wrong. It is wrong. They've got to go fetch him and bring him back. And then this is an additional statement that was on top of Robert's order that said the government should facilitate and then stop there. Sotomayor kind of argued that the government's argument, moreover, implies that it could deport and incarcerate any person, including U.S. citizens, without legal consequence so long as it does so before a court can intervene. So if you're not scared and worried now, you should be. They can get anybody. You don't have to be an undocumented person. You don't have to be an immigrant. You could be a U.S. citizen. You could be here legally, like Abrego Garcia was. And that's the slippery slope we've gone down. And we're going, it's like full speed ahead unless the court weighs in. And so far, they had another hearing today, and the Department of Justice is fighting what what the Supreme Court ruled yesterday. I mean, fighting what Justice Roberts saying, hey, we don't have to tell you his whereabouts. Oh, this is a fight. This is the Trump fight, tooth and nail. It's bad for everyone, not just immigrants, not just legal or undocumented ones. It's bad for everyone. And I asked my buddy, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, Professor Emeritus, Asian American Studies, to come in and help us kind of sort this out. Dan, am I overreacting saying that this should put a chill in all of us? Because if they can hold Kilmar Abrego Garcia without just telling where he is, and here's a guy, he was deported by mistake. if they can go after him and then feel like, oh, we can't bring him back, they can do this to all of us. Am I reading this correctly?
Absolutely, you're not exaggerating at all. But my concern is that the rest of the public isn't that interested. They're more
They're not
interested.
interested. How can they not be interested if the government can come after anyone, anyone for whatever reason?
I
Here's
don't think they believe that. I don't think they believe that. Just keep in mind all of the people of various people of color, communities of color that said they're not coming after us; they're coming after the criminals.
right,
They
right,
they
right.
honestly believe that, and they keep accepting not only Trump's statements on this, but the statements of all of his underlings,
Yeah,
and uh, they are willing to still trust Trump. I keep hearing that, trust Trump, and mostly in relation to Trump's tariffs, they still want to trust Trump, and I've been saying every time we've had this conversation over the last several months
yeah,
that what it takes is a direct loss. The people
yeah,
have to feel harmed in direct terms.
yeah.
Right now they're reacting to things in sort of groupthink,
Right.
and groupthink based on, first of all, their commitment to Trump. And I do not expect them, as you have done with your own surveys,
Yeah.
somewhat more casual surveys, but nonetheless not any of the less serious, right, in terms of
Right.
their accuracy, of people who voted for Trump, that they haven't changed their minds yet. And you keep asking every time something really serious comes up, that, like this situation, is clearly these are all these what not only Musk has done, what the Doge group has done, right,
Yeah.
are crimes. What they
Yeah.
have done are crimes. They are
Well,
violations of federal law.
and
Okay,
all we and if people say, "Oh, they're not crimes," they're against the law. If it's
they're
against the law,
crimes.
it's a
They
crime.
are crimes.
And if they go beyond the line and go over that line, they're against the law, and it's an illegal act that's being perpetrated on the United States. And and the thing about the court, I mean, Roberts was being kind of cute saying yesterday, well, we can't rule on the district judge's timeline, so we're not gonna we're not we're that's done, but we are going to rule on whether or not Garcia, Kilmar, or Abrego Garcia needs to be returned. And all he said was that the order properly requires the government to facilitate
Yeah, that's right.
his release from custody, and then but didn't no deadline, and it said the intended scope of the term effectuate, and it was, that's a district court's ruling, but it says, for its part, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. This was signed by Roberts. But today, the Justice Department said, hey, we don't have to show you anything.
Yeah,
We don't have to give you anything, which is like a clear defiance. Now we are at constitutional crisis level, right? The Justice Department, the administration is telling the courts, and this is after a Supreme Court decision, the highest court in the land. It's saying we don't have to listen to you,
it was nine
right?
zip too. It was nine
Yeah,
zip. And the
yeah,
reason that, offline, you're correct. You earlier you made a comment
hmm
offline that this was weak sauce,
yeah,
and the reason it was weak sauce is tactically that's what Roberts had to do to get nine zip, to get
right,
all nine on. I mean, can you even believe that Thomas would agree to this, right? Or that
yeah,
Alito would agree to this, unless if it had been voiced more strongly. In other words, if he had said, "You got to bring him back, and you got to bring him back now," those two would have been out on this. But
yeah,
it would still been a strong majority opinion. but he wanted to get 9-zip because it sounds more impressive. It looks more impressive because there's unanimity on something
Right.
coming out of the court, and that impresses the general public. But the general public doesn't care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the sad point that we can make here, that it's all kind of show, right? Ju-
Yes,
the
that's
justices
right.
the 9-0 means is meaningless because they can't make the they can't make the Trump administration do or follow the law, and we see what's happening, that the Trump administration is not following the law. And
If
thank goodness Sotomayor is there to put this addendum, this statement that came along with the Chief Justice's order. She was joined by Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Kagan to say that, hey, you know, we're this whole idea of facilitating, the only argument the government offers in support of its request that the United States cannot grant relief once a departure crosses the border is wrong. I mean, because that argument is just
it's really
that
ridiculous.
that guy belongs in the United States. But
Well,
then,
it's not, they're saying once he traveled beyond the border, he's out of our. You can if somebody is a resident, a legitimate resident in the United States, whether or not they entered illegally, quote unquote, right,
yeah,
which is not criminal. Once
yeah,
again, that's not a crime. Okay,
yeah.
uh, and once they've established that they're at least a resident, right, the United States has jurisdiction on wherever that person is.
Well,
Okay,
just like if
now
some, yeah,
furthermore, they're paying the government in El Salvador to run that friggin' prison and house these people. So they
right,
have a contractual relationship, okay? And that contractual relationship means that the two parties are in agreement, right? And the
hmm,
United States is responsible for what happens to their people. What? So the United States is not responsible for what happens to people when just because they put them in an a Salvadoran prison.
yeah.
That's it.
Well, and look, if you were on vacation and something happened to you in Europe,
Yeah,
in
that's
Asia,
it. Yeah.
you
Hmm.
know, they have an obligation
Yep.
to you as a tourist. And you say he's not a tourist. Well, he has the United States has an interest in this person, or there's a mutual interest, and he's a resident. But to say that, hey, he's out of this,
He's out of our
he,
jurisdiction.
yeah,
That's their excuse.
yeah.
That's
But then,
they said this. They did the same thing about the planes.
yeah,
One of
but
the planes hadn't even gotten off the ground yet, right?
yeah,
The other two were still in the air, and they used as an excuse they're out of our jurisdiction. That was number one, and number two, right? Number two was we can't. We couldn't turn them around because your your
oh
orders
yeah,
were oral. They
they
weren't
were
written,
written,
right?
yeah. Well, so Dan, what do we do when we get these
Contempt.
stupid?
Contempt. Roberts can hold them in contempt. If it were me, and I know
Mm,
some judges that are sitting right now, okay, on the bench,
mm,
if lawyers did that on any case in front of them, just an
yeah,
outright refusal, okay, they would
mm,
be held in contempt and then they would be put in the lockup immediately. Okay, they can do that. They
see,
have their own police force. People don't
yeah,
realize there is such a thing as a SCOTUS PD, and
yeah.
those police are immediately responsible to SCOTUS. They're not controlled by the DOJ.
See, and yeah, and that's a good thing to know. But I don't know if it's going to happen.
No,
It
because
should,
it's
but
Roberts with
yeah.
a 5-4, or 6-3 majority.
But what's really scary is when Sotomayor in her statement says the government's argument, moreover, implies that it could deport and incarcerate any person, including U.S. citizens, without legal consequence.
But see, people are going to think that that's exaggeration. They're going to say it's another one of those three liberal justices, right? You
Yeah,
know, it's another one of those three liberal justices, and Sotomayor is one of the worst, right? Most liberal as far as they're concerned, and
yeah,
they're going to dismiss it. That's
yeah.
what they do.
But this is the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He was deported accidentally. It was an error. The Department of Justice guy, who got fired, who admitted that it was a mistake, got fired, got pulled, and I note he's on some kind of leave, if not fired already. But the point is, the DOJ has no intention of backing down. They have every intention of defying this to the bitter end. And if they could do this to a person who is a resident, a legal resident, he's an immigrant, but he's a legal resident. They could do this to anybody. That makes Sotomayor's argument more. I mean, more.
It's not just plausible. It's
Yeah,
more than feasible.
yeah,
The question is whether or not it's likely, especially now that negative attention has been brought to this matter. What about the fact that 70 to 75% of the people that are now incarcerated, as far as we can identify them, right? Because we don't
yeah.
know who all of
Right.
them are, right?
Yeah, they
But
aren't criminals.
but yeah,
Yeah,
no convictions.
yeah.
No conviction. And so the whole rationale for getting rid of them, particularly if you take Trump, once again, trust Trump, right? At
Yeah,
his word, was we're going after the criminals. We're going after the people who've done heinous crimes. He even learned a new word,
yeah.
heinous. You probably
He
can't
is.
spell it,
But
but
this is part of the Trump mo, right? You lie about the law. You extend your power by lying about the law because
yeah,
this is
because
just
you can get away with it.
this is crazy law that
Yeah,
that he's arguing
but he
here.
can get away with it. That's the point. And
Eh,
why can he get away with it? Because the courts have not done a full attack and penalty against their violations, and they have to do that. They have to show it's not enough just that you make decisions and you give court orders. You have to enforce those orders. Now, I've been on this issue for at least 2 months.
yeah,
You know, I asked Mark Elias. Okay, so what? You get a bunch of court orders, you get some court decisions, but who's going to enforce them when it's the Department of Justice that's supposed to have that obligation?
right.
And you're seeing right now full face on contradiction, right, of the Constitution, of checks and balances, right,
Hmm.
and even of due process and basic constitutional law.
So right now, the judge is telling the Department of Justice that they want to hear daily updates on their efforts, on the Department of Justice efforts to return this wrongly deported guy, Garcia. Who knows if they'll comply? But it seems like the guy's been held for what, almost a month. We don't know what his situation is.
That's right.
Maybe it's good that most of the people that they deported to this jail have no criminal records, because maybe it's not as he's in a not as bad situation as one could fear, because he's in this supermax prison. But I don't know. It's scary. I mean, I would be afraid for this guy's life. You know,
Absolutely.
and they don't want him coming out and giving first person accounts about this is what happened. This is how he was treated. This is how this is what they told. We know that he was stopped. Taking his he has an autistic child. He was driving him somewhere. They were stopped, and I mean, I can't imagine, the ICE folks, what they did to him. But this is Kafkaesque, right? This is Franz Kafka. This is the trial, right? This is, I
This is
mean,
it.
never before. I mean, we can bring up all the books that we read in high school: Kafka, 1984, Orwell, The Doublespeak. It
Right.
all applies. I mean, and all that was like decades ago. They're all great works of art. The Trial by Franz Kafka, Orwell's
Yeah, I don't
1984.
I don't
It's
know. Yeah, but I don't know if they're assigning those anymore.
Oh well, they're certainly not assigning Maya Angelou. Maya
Yeah.
Angelou, she's gone out at the Naval Academy library. They do get to read Mein Kampf. You get to read Mein Kampf. You get Hitler's in there. Maya
Do you
Angelou's
get to
not.
read the Communist Manifesto? Do you get to
Yeah,
read the Communist
I don't
Manifesto?
know if they have the Communist Manifesto, because you can't really teach communism. You just have to, or capitalism, and communism. You just go out there and practice capitalism, which is you deport these people, and then
I guess Adam Smith doesn't count, huh?
Adam Smith. Who's he? Who's Adam Smith? Wealth of nations. Hey, there's only one nation that's wealthy. All right, so we don't know what's going to happen to Kilmar. We got to follow this case. We got to follow Khalil's case because that's a matter of the First Amendment. They're holding him up for the First Amendment. And once again, if you can be put away for the First Amendment, add Khalil's case in Kilmar's case, they can go after anyone. And look at what the Krebs case, all those, and Anonymous's case, the guy who wrote the book Anonymous. These are people who pretty much said, "Oh no, Mr. President, the system isn't rigged. The elections were fair," and he insists that the elections were rigged and that he lost, because the elections were rigged. And he insists that he won the election, and so does Attorney General Pam Bondi, which means, hey, she's not going to stop any of this, and she's not going to stop the executive orders that really go after these two former, Trump employees who said that, hey, I'm sorry, you lost, sir. Elections are fair.
Yep.
They even want to put one of them up for treason, and you
Yep.
can't do that unless you're in a actual war. But this, you saw that cabinet meeting yesterday where they pretty much everyone kissed the ring.
There's actually a definition for treason, and then if you
Yeah,
look at the few cases where people have actually been convicted of treason,
yeah.
whatever they've got in mind for either of these, either Krebs or what's his name, it,
Anonymous. He was
yeah,
anonymous.
well, not.
Yeah, that was his book. He wrote the book.
Yeah, but he came out
Yeah.
and said what he was going to say. There's some discussion around contempt, and I want to see them hold everybody that's pushing these issues and representing the government in court to be found in contempt. And
I
then,
hope. Yeah, I
yeah,
hope so. But because I wasn't really afraid about it. Actually, I'll tell you something. If you put up a if you're in an area with a lot of Trump signs and you see, you are reluctant to put up any sign that is counter to that. I
yeah,
noticed that uh, when Kamala Harris was running, very few Harris Walz signs. I was in Austin during the election, and a handful. You saw a handful of Harris Walz signs, but I think there's a real. No one wants to be targeted. Everyone wants to be left alone. They have weaponized politics to such a degree that everyone is scared about any kind of retribution. And the executive orders against those two ex-Trump employees shows they will take retribution. They will take action against people who are anti-Trump.
sure. And it all depends on what kind of neighborhood you live in and all the rest of that. And
Yeah.
it's understandable. I mean, look how Alito himself reacted
Oh yeah.
when
When
people
the
had
the flag.
Ukrainian flags up
Yeah.
and LGBTQ flags up, and
Yeah.
he was he even flew the American flag upside down one time, right? I mean,
Right.
that's pretty crazy. That's pretty
Yeah.
crazy. And this guy is on the Supreme Court of the United States. That you don't think he brings those kinds of biases with him to the cases? Come
Yep.
on,
Well.
man.
Yeah. Well. All right. So let's talk about the. I don't know what's going to happen to Khalil, but the First Amendment thing. I don't know how strong it's going to be to free him. It should be as strong as It's as strong as the Constitution is. It's the First Amendment.
Well, you can also look at it from the other end, which is what kind of material are they presenting as evidence of a crime, or something. And in this instance, they're trying to allege that he's a danger to the country, right? That what he's saying, and that's the ridiculous position that
Yeah.
Secretary Rubio. I can't stand calling him Secretary Rubio, man.
Yeah.
And I resist, calling him any of the nicknames that
Yeah.
the president had called him in the past. But the thrust of his argument is that he's his beliefs and his statements based on his beliefs that are critical of American foreign policy are a danger to foreign policy. How? One guy's statement, right,
It's a
is a
danger
danger
because
to American foreign policy
it's
because
a danger because
he could sway millions of people, and what will they do?
no, it's a danger because it successfully refutes the stupid inanities that the administration is spouting on foreign policy. But this, all right. So that's the Khalil case. The third immigration case is this Social Security matter, where the Doge people have placed thousands of migrants in the dead file, and that essentially, and these migrants are here because
It
of
shuts down whatever
yeah,
kind of form of assistance they're getting if it's SSA related.
right, and or also if you don't have a Social Security card that's worth anything, you can't open up a bank account, you
That's
can't
right.
get
You
a
don't exist.
job,
You
you
don't
don't
exist
exist.
legally.
And so they've really kind of ghosted these people, forcing them to choose live out this existence in this invisibility or self deport.
Yeah, they're also forcing them to register as well. Okay,
Well,
so,
they're already registered.
yeah, well, but now they want them to come out and register again. I mean, they want to register on a specific list.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, they
I
already,
have one thing to say to all people of color, right?
yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
do you still think that they're not racist? I mean, what are you crazy?
We're
What?
post racial. We're
Yeah,
post
right.
racial,
No, man,
Dan.
I
You know,
heard
no,
that from English professors at my
we are
former university.
we are post-racial. We don't care about race. We only care about the eternal verities, which is white is best, white is better, white is supreme. Uh,
Yeah. Well, see, they don't come out and say that, but they
mm,
don't criticize people who do.
yes,
So you have the known Nazis, right? I mean,
yeah,
they're
the
swastika
no,
swastika dressed Nazis, and
yeah,
they come out and say things like that, right?
and
You
yeah,
got some members of the Proud Boys, etc., that come out and say things like that, and then the people on the right don't criticize them for whatever they do.
because
Not
if
until
you
they kill somebody. When they kill somebody, then people get they know that they got to get critical. That's crossing the line.
unless they use a gun, and then Second Amendment, and that's what guns are for.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what guns are for. Isn't that a Lionel Richie song? That's what guns are for.
yeah,
That's what guns are for. That was Dionne Warwick and
yeah. Never mind.
oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
my friend, the Six Gun. Hey, so yeah, that is so strange. What's going on here? Well, with these immigrants who
all
are
of this stuff is completely predictable. Okay,
yeah
all you have to do is try to answer the question: what can we do to increase pressure, right, on people that we don't want in this country? That's
yeah
all you have to do. So if you understand that as the goal, let's get these people out. That's the goal.
yeah.
Okay? Then all you do is come up with measures that will increase pressure on them to leave. And
Well,
so,
yeah
what did they do in California? You remember, what is 187?
yeah.
Right?
Get rid of all the social
That's
services.
right. And
Yeah.
what did they say? Well, it was only about health care, and education, right? I said,
Yeah.
okay, fine. If that's the case, what's your goal? Because
Yeah.
it's not keeping the state healthy, either mentally or physically, right? If you're gonna make it no access, right,
Mhm. Yeah.
to government services, right?
But
And
but
so,
but 187 failed. Failed in California.
it passed. It did not fail.
Did
It
180?
passed. 187 passed, 209 passed.
Where?
Anti-affirmative action. Remember
Yeah,
that?
I know
Young
209
California
passed.
Civil Rights.
I thought
No,
187.
187 passed, but I'd say about 30 to 40% of it was found unconstitutional and
Right.
therefore not enforceable.
Right. That's all right. You're right. It passed, but then it was challenged, and it wasn't fully carried out in the way that the 187 ballot writers wanted. But still, you're right. The popular vote was it passed.
Big time.
I was
60%,
living.
60% vote.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, right.
living. That was one of the time. That was like part of the Great Awakening for many people. That oh, this hate is real, it's only going to be growing. The anti immigrant hate is growing, and now it has grown to a point where it has elected a president twice. And at that, the one thing that struck me about that cabinet meeting that they had online, uh, and we haven't even touched on the biggest story, which is the falling apart of the world through Trump's trade war. The thing about that cabinet meeting that got me is how when Pam Bondi talked, oh,
Oh
everything
man.
everything was, oh, we got rid of DEI here, we got rid of DEI there, DEI's gone. And that's, if you want to get on Trump's good side, that's the only thing that matters. Get rid of DEI, get rid of any talk of race. That's why we're seeing the stuff happening at the
At the Smith. At the Smith.
yeah,
They're
at the
going after the
Smithsonian.
Smithsonian. What are they
And
going to do? Shut down the whole, African American museum? Are they going to shut that
I
down?
they're
They
just going
just
to
don't want.
show.
They don't want history to be told. We
Right.
we just started doing that, right?
Yeah.
Within the last 50 or 60 years, in serious terms,
Yeah.
right? Particularly with the establishment of ethnic studies as a formal and recognized academic field. Okay,
Mm.
so we've been doing it that way. And when they were talking about getting rid of CRT and all of the problems that critical race theory was,
Mm.
as though it was being taught in kindergarten or something, okay, they're
Mm.
really talking about ethnic studies. If you
Yeah.
look at what
Oh
they were
yeah.
against, they're really talking about ethnic studies. And that, remember the Tucson case that came out of Arizona? What was that, about almost 15 years ago now? uh, uh, and they outlawed Mexican American studies. They said that this is divisive,
Oh
it's
yeah.
reverse racism,
Mm.
all the rest of that. And that statute, local ordinance, was upheld by the Ninth Circuit, right? The circuit that the rest of America loves to hate as
Yeah.
a crazy liberal circuit. They upheld it. I was extremely disappointed with that. With that,
Yeah. Well,
that
I
opened
mean,
the door to going after ethnic studies.
well, I wanted to bring this up because there's been a number of articles everywhere, and reacting to the actions of the Trump administration, not just going after DEI, but going after uh, colleges for and their funding, for the way they reacted to the Palestinian questions and the protests, saying that they were anti-Semitic. I mean that under the guise of fighting anti-Semitism, they're shutting down a lot of these
That's right.
programs, a lot of the funding, and Columbia University is like one of the first, if not the first. It's going to be the model, the example. But other institutions are feeling this. So you, Daniel Phil Gonzalez, professor of ethnic studies, San Francisco State University, College of Ethnic Studies, were part of that student strike that began. I believe it was the very first College of Ethnic Studies in America.
Yeah, definitely the first. Well, at the time it was established, it was a school of ethnic studies
Mm.
because San Francisco State was a college, not yet a university. The distinction, of course, is that the university can offer PhD coursework and degrees.
Right.
So at the time we were not. We were only offering up to the master's degree. And so rather than colleges, we had schools, right? We had departments organized under schools. And so we were the equivalent. What we wanted to do was establish an institution that was the equivalent of other schools. And
Mm.
the other schools were the School of Science, for example.
Yeah. But you were
School
you
of
were the
Humanities.
first. You were the first in
We
the
were
United
we,
States.
we were the first, but UC Berkeley kept claiming for. I mean, I think they probably claim it now
Yeah.
to this day that
Yeah.
they were the first. And they say, well, we got an agreement to have ethnic studies at Berkeley on March 15th, right? the Ides of March, right?
Mm.
And they say you didn't get your settlement until the 20th of March, right? 5 days later, okay.
Ah,
And you know what our response was?
what's that?
When were the first classes taught
Ah,
in
and
any ethnic
where
studies
were they done?
program, and where were they taught? We get a non-response.
Where were the first classes, Professor Dan?
SF State,
SFC. So, all
uh,
right. So
late
you
August.
were there at the beginning. You're seeing what's happening now. You're seeing, uh, real. I mean, the field has grown. Places like Yale and Harvard have forms of ethnic studies,
Yeah,
but
but it took forever for them, right?
right,
To
right. But
establish.
they are now these kind of courses that really are legitimate history courses.
Yep,
They're they're
everything,
history courses.
all of the social sciences and the
Yeah,
arts,
and
humanities.
and and now we are seeing this rollback, and uh, we're seeing monies, federal grants pulled on the study of this because there's this idea out that teaching about race will create racists. I mean that's
No,
one article in the Atlantic.
it in and of itself is racist.
Yeah,
Teaching about race in and of itself is racist.
which is bogus. You get
Yeah, well,
I mean, are you if you teach someone Hitler in a history class, are you teaching them to be Nazis?
yeah, well, I remember when one of my favorite professors from undergrad taught in international relations,
Yeah.
and I think he taught a bit in interdisciplinary social sciences as well. Anyway, his name is Theodore Ted Keller, Keller,
Hmm.
and he at least once a year would invite a Nazi,
Hmm.
the head of the Nazi party,
Yeah.
neo-Nazi, right,
They're
in
around. You
California,
can find them.
to
They're
come and
here.
speak on campus, and there would be
Yeah.
all kinds of protests, just like what happens more recently at Berkeley all the time,
Hmm.
all kinds of protests on the campus. But First Amendment, he had a
Yeah.
First Amendment right to be there. But
Yeah.
everybody would say, Ted Keller is way left of center, man. This guy's out there.
Yeah.
He was not only an academic relativist, he was a philosophical relativist, and he exercised that same kind of thinking
Uh huh.
in terms of an application to international relations, and international politics. And he was a great professor. And we had other great professors as well, uh, who were in regular combat with him. And all of them, especially the ones who were critical of his uh, relative positions, right, um, were State Department officials. Many of them had been actively working within State Department positions all over the world.
Hmm.
Okay, and those were the people who established the first international relations program at SF State. Okay, and you can tell how powerful and influential they were because they got great labs. They always had the best equipment, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, the point is that Keller would have right wingers come onto the campus and give them the opportunity to speak. It was
Well.
an excellent exercise
Yeah.
because it forced students to develop a way of articulating their criticism, and it showed whether or not these speakers from the extreme right were
Yeah.
capable of arguing their own position without relying on well established.
Well, you look, the whole idea of bringing this together as an academic exercise is one thing, but to take the jump and say you are actually inculcating or you're recruiting or you're somehow,
Well, but that's what they're doing. But that's
yeah,
what they're doing. When they're accusing the left, and they're
yeah,
accusing even moderates,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
who bring on people to have those kinds of discussions as promoting diversity, as
yeah.
promoting inequality, even though the reverse is actually what their goal is.
Well, now you can't even mention diversity, or it's they're like people are just erasing DEI. This is the whole part of the eraser, really, or
No, that's
erasure.
true. That's true.
of all these ideas, and it scares me because I've seen people like what's his name, yeah, the Raging Cajun, you
Oh,
know, Carville, James. I've seen
yeah,
people
James
like James
Carville.
Carville say,
Yeah,
"Hey, look, identity politics is dead. We
right.
don't care. Identity politics sunk the Democrats in the last election. We don't care if you're black. We don't care about your race. We just want to win." And now this just win idea is creeping in among the Democrats, and it's really, I think, creating a fissure among people left of center and people who are more progressive who still see that the fight for civil rights is ongoing. Uh, you heritage identity still counts. I mean, especially on not the white side, but on black, Latino, Asian. I mean, to say this is the first African American, first Asian American woman to be nominated for president. That was a big thing. You can't. That's also part of history. It also
Well,
wasn't
yeah, I
it
gotta.
wasn't it wasn't the reason why she was selected, Kamala Harris. But then
But it was
to
the reason she wasn't selected.
well, I mean, the thing is, you can't just come back and say, well, that means we got to get rid of all this identity politics
Well,
or identity talk.
but see, yeah, you're right. But that is a severe reaction
Yeah.
to the analysis that she was rejected in great part because people identified her with two negatives, right? One of them was she was identified with Biden and his weakness,
Hmm.
okay, and two, she was identified as being some kind of mixed race black person, okay, and a woman.
And a
So
woman, that
all of
was
those
probably
things are
more
against.
important. That was more important, I think. I mean, in terms of you want
So you
to
think
come up.
misogyny and sexism played a greater role?
I think misogyny and I think the connection to Biden was now that stuff is coming out that some of these books are coming out.
I think that was just as strong. I see them
Yeah.
as co-equal, essentially.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
essentially.
some of these
But the
books.
weak. Well, you were right though when you say that this is a reaction.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's not. Well, I I, I was ticked off 30 years ago when people went from the right kept
Mhm.
saying when an African American organization took a position on an issue, let's say the NAACP, right? They took a
Yeah.
position. They said identity politics, identity politics. All these people are doing is just basing their thing on their identity, and then they of course when gays and lesbians,
Yeah.
LGBTQ started coming out, identity politics. They criticize that. What, white people don't function on identity?
Hey, New York Times, the best white ethnic newspaper around. That's what they say. That this is the thing about identity politics. I mean, yeah, there's got to be something more than saying you are the first African American, first South Asian woman, first Asian American, this or that. But there's got to be a reason why you're first. No one has abandoned meritocracy. No one has abandoned the quality of whatever it is that you do and whatever your endeavor. But it is a mark of history to say, here we are. What a milestone! We have an African American woman who goes from the vice presidential mansion there, the Naval Observatory, to the White House. That's a big deal. She's
Yep,
running for president.
right.
That's a milestone in a country that enslaved all those many African Americans back in the 19th century.
Well, see, people are going to say we didn't see any open sexism and misogyny. Well, but you saw people think out loud that she was
Yeah,
not competent.
yeah,
That
and
she was not competent. Okay.
also it's not the open instances of sexism and racism you got to worry about. It's the closed one, the closeted ones.
That's
That's
right.
the ones you
That's
got
right.
to worry about.
She's incompetent, right? Why is she incompetent? Because she's black, or because she's a Indian, or because she's a woman? Okay.
Yeah.
And look at who voted against her. Look who voted for Trump,
Oh, yeah. The
right?
women. The women.
Who are also, yeah, and not only that, black men, young black
Yeah.
men, young
Yeah.
Latinos, right? Who had voted for, many of whom had voted for Obama.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I just think that the for me, what hit me hard is that when I start seeing academics who are currently in the field, just shaking their heads and seeing what's happening to people like Khalil in Colombia and the Turkish graduate student, you know, being being taken away, and then there's that, and then there's what's happening in the ivory tower itself, right? They're cutting back on classes, they're cutting back on funding, they're making Columbia University as a model, of how they're going to make everyone bow down and do exactly what the administration wants. And this is, just another example, and extend it to our earlier discussion about immigrants and people who have very different views, First Amendment views that are different. The administration is doing all it can to dismantle what's normal or America as we know it, and this is where we are. So it's not surprising that we have this trade war that was started up, and who knows who knows where we are. I don't think Trump knows where we are, and people still trust in Trump. That's a crazy thing.
Well, yeah, but see, we should expect that they're going to do that.
Yeah.
People who have invested in a particular political position and also invested in particular personalities, a
Oh
candidate,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They aren't going to reverse themselves easily. I mean, if at all, they're not. The best that you can hope for is that they are effectively suppressed or silenced because they can't come out with strong defenses for his actions.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
essentially because they get injured by his actions. All
right.
right.
Well, what about integrity? What about the rule of law? I mean, we've always been talking about.
Yeah.
I guess rule of law in America doesn't count for much.
Those are abstractions and vagaries. They are abstractions and vagaries, just like
Ah.
democracy. It's
Ah.
an abstraction and a vagary. Due process is an abstraction, it's a vagary. Equal protection, abstraction, vagary.
All right. So then the only thing that's real is eggs cost how much, or iPhones cost
Gasoline,
how much,
gasoline, yeah.
gasoline, food price. I mean, we're leading up to. We saw the hands off rallies last week, but now they've got to be either sustained or they have to continue in some way, because they a rally once a weekend, every few months, not so bad, but something sustained. I mean, First Amendment, people out there marching might have an effect, but then you go back to what we were talking about with Kilmar
Right.
Abrego Garcia. They deport everybody. They can disappear anyone, even legal citizens. They can
Well,
send they can send
trying
us
to
all.
now they're trying to disappear foreign students, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I mean,
So foreign students who come out and make any kind of comments, and I saw a map. I couldn't find it before the show, but I saw a map of. I'm looking at one from NBC News of showing where all of the colleges and universities that have had students with visa revocations,
oh yeah, they're all over. I
and
mean,
it's
you're
all
you're in
over. Yeah.
California, Ivy
Well,
Leagues.
well. In all the places where it's more than likely that foreign students are going to want to go,
Right.
basically that's it. If you want to look at the cultural centers and all that kind of stuff, that's where they're going. That's where they're going, man.
Yeah, and this hits the universities, the colleges and universities hard, because the foreign students, wherever I worked, they always paid full freight. They always
More
paid
than full freight. More than
more,
full freight.
more. Yeah, they
Yeah,
they
I
pay
mean,
they
it's at least triple
yeah.
for
Oh well, I
for
didn't
state
realize it was that much.
tuition and all that. It's really high,
Yeah,
and sometimes they get support. But the other side of this is many of them are among the best and the brightest coming out of their countries,
yeah, and
and if they make two choices, right?
hmm,
Some go back and they become great leaders in their
right,
countries, and they bring with them notions of democracy, right? And
notions.
Yeah, exactly.
Trumpian notions.
Well, sometimes they do, and that's what kind of worries me about all these people being released by from Russia and congratulating and thanking Trump, right?
Yeah. Well, right
Uh,
now they've got a graduate student from Harvard who she was a vivisector, but she's getting tossed out. Her visa was revoked,
yep.
and no one's helping her. Harvard's not helping her, and she's anti-Putin, and I don't know what's going to happen to her. I mean, New York Times did a big thing on her, but and then there's
Well, you
Asian
know what I
students,
would
of
do?
course.
Okay, the first thing that I would do
Yeah,
is if I were one of the other democracies like England or France or whatever, I would say, "Come here."
offer asylum.
Yeah,
Hey,
offer asylum and free gig, man.
yeah.
Go, to your best universities.
Well, that's happening to university professors here who are feeling the chill. They're getting gigs from Canada and Europe,
Sure, sure,
and a lot of them are saying, "Yeah, I'll go there. I'll go teach there." I
sure.
mean, that's sad. Well, okay, so let's move on into the big issue, and that is where we are with the trade war. Um, you know, I was in a funeral on Wednesday when the whiplash stuff happened, and we got the 90-day. I guess it's a kind of 90-day
Suspension.
period, yeah,
Yeah,
suspension where they get to do 150 deals in 90 days or however many it is. It's impractical,
yeah.
but it's also just it's all just a search for the fig leaf for crashing the damn economy.
Right.
We gave Trump the keys. He's an old guy. He crashes a car. We've lost $11 trillion, and he needs a big fig leaf. And the fig leaf is okay. We got 90 days, and no real answers. Everyone is sort of like saying,
They
"Trust in
keep
Trump."
claiming right now they're claiming that he's. I mean, here's great diplomacy, right? Great diplomacy. They're kissing my ass. Isn't that
Yeah, yeah,
wonderful?
yeah.
This is the
He said,
president of the United States of America, and we're
"Yeah,
talking about one of the most serious problems that we're facing right at this instant, right?
yeah,
And he says they're kissing my ass. When he was asked which country has come forth and actually made a deal at this point, if they're striving so hard to make a deal, name one. Well,
can't."
no answer, man.
We're in the process. Top secret. Can't can't
Hey, it's
can't
happening.
disclose. Can't disclose.
It's happening, man.
Yeah. In the mean.
That's the other thing. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
the great American population is worried about what things cost them. I understand that, and
Yeah.
they should not be faulted for that. They
Yeah.
should be faulted for what the causes are. Why are those problems? Okay, and when but they got to get hit hard. They got to get hit hard so that they see clearly that the tariffs caused their problem. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what they have to see. Okay,
Well, the
now
tariffs. Before tariffs, things were fine. Things in
no, they weren't.
January. Well, they were. I mean, relatively fine. I mean, we didn't have this
Not in
downward
their
spiral.
eyes. Not in their eyes.
Yeah.
They saw, first of all, COVID poisoned everything,
Yeah.
right? And so instead of just looking at how adjustments had to be made to prevent not only the United States economy but the global economy from going really far south and
Mm.
tanking, another depression or at least a recession. Um, they don't want to see that. They don't want to understand that. Okay, the Democrats knew that there was a danger in putting out all of that COVID related aid, right?
Yeah.
But you had to do it in order to save the big institutions, the many manufacturers that we have, right, like cars, okay,
Mm.
and also education, the schools, okay, and then the hospitals, right,
Yeah.
with how many nurses and doctors and technicians did we sacrifice to COVID because they were overworked, right,
Yeah.
and actually being attacked by their patients because they had patients that didn't believe that COVID was real. They had
Yeah.
patients that didn't want to get the vaccination. All of that, okay, all of that, and instead they blame it on Biden. That's the easiest thing to do, especially when you
Still
saw how
to
weak
this.
he was.
Yeah. Still to this day. I mean, Trump is talking about, oh, Biden. Look what Biden did. It's not
Well,
Biden.
but he has to do that, yeah.
Yeah.
He
But
has to
he
do that.
has to, but
Yeah.
it's not Biden's fault, and it's not.
Well, the reason he has to do it is because it's a lie.
Right, right,
You know,
right.
so he can't let it go because somebody's going to say, "Well, that's a lie."
He's just looking for a bigger fig leaf,
Well, but see,
and
so if that's where the American concerns are, they're not paying attention to the bigger threats, and the bigger threats have to do with other cuts that are being made inside the government, particularly national security related cuts.
oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I mean,
and
they're everywhere. The cuts
well,
are everywhere.
the most recent cuts are cybersecurity cuts, man. NSC cuts.
You
Okay,
know, and so the United States is talking to Putin today. They've got some envoy going to meet with Putin, but and Putin's not doing anything to get for peace to move toward peace in Ukraine. He and there's no tariffs against Russia,
no,
but what Trump is doing is he's really buttering up the United States for the fall. I mean, the fall is happening. The fall is we see our economic stability is we're so we're in this land of uncertainty, right? We have a situation where our allies don't like us and don't trust us anymore.
you can't. They can't.
Yeah,
It's not just that. It's not like a voluntary thing that they don't trust the United States anymore.
yeah,
Any logical application, right, of
mm,
an analysis of our situation and our relationship to other countries would
yeah,
result in them not wanting to trust the United States. They can't afford that.
yeah.
They cannot afford those kinds of risks.
And
Okay.
what really got me, and it got Trump the other day, and that's why he got the reversal. He saw the bond market, he saw what was happening
Yeah.
there, and
When both
and
of them are going south, when stocks and bonds are going south.
right, and that's worrisome because usually it means that people are selling. They're selling their trust in America with the bonds, and they're short selling on the stock side. They're short selling America there,
That's
which
right.
is two negatives that don't make a positive really. And gold is going up in the meantime, so they're buying gold, and it also means that the dollar is going down. The faith in the dollar now. Some people say that this may be the reason, that oh Trump wants a weaker dollar so that the tariffs won't cost that much. But it really that's kind of like a weird way of thinking
No kidding.
because it just means that the United States is weak. Where the United States is
Yeah,
weak, it's
that's
not
right.
strong.
That's
Uh,
right.
and then
Well,
the House just passed this budget or not the blueprint for a budget they want to pass, which is going to add like $5 trillion and to our debt, and our debt is already great. The
yeah.
interest we pay on our debt is already
They keep
greater than our
pointing to it.
defense.
They keep saying it's 35 trillion, 36 trillion dollars, and then they say, okay, but we're going to add
Yeah.
5.1 trillion dollars to 36 trillion dollars. Okay, and
So yeah,
when you look at any scale, right,
yeah,
any objective scale as
yeah,
to how debt got generated and during which presidential
oh,
administrations and during which congressional
mm,
controls by
yeah.
parties, right?
Bush
Partisan
and
control.
Trump.
When you look at it, it's really obvious, man.
Yeah,
The debt goes up under Republicans and it gets brought down by Democrats.
yeah,
And,
and
you know,
I was in Washington at the time of the Clinton administration,
that's right.
and man, they
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 cut.
they got the debt reduction part, and it wasn't as painful. It wasn't as
Yes,
painful as
they
this.
cut. They cut, and they made bipartisan cuts. Remember the closing of military bases
Yeah, I remember that.
all over the country,
Yeah,
right?
but this is what happens when you have smart people in charge, especially from the top. It that trickles down. Because they hire smart people to do things in their name, and now we have really he's got to be the dumbest president ever. Uh, you know, Donald
Well,
Trump.
I think it's beyond dumb. I think the man is insane. Okay,
Well,
okay.
I want to I'll say that for the well. I guess some psychiatrists have said that, but uh, he's my president. I want him to do well, but he does these stupid things, dumb things. Hires people who are yes people who just like encourage him, and uh, the plan for where we are now with the tariffs is that what he's going to go on instinct. He's going to
That's
just
what he said.
yeah, I
Those
know.
are his words.
Yeah, I
Instinct was
know.
his word,
And so in
but
the
he
meantime,
misspelled it.
yeah, yeah. It stinks. It just stinks. Stinky, stinky. But the thing about it, I just wait. I'm waiting for the smart people to say, "This is enough. We gotta help him out." But
No, Clinton
that's not
Clinton
gonna happen.
won because he was clearly dragging the Democratic Party to the right. He was
Yeah.
dragging them towards the center, and I feel that he dragged some of the policy across the center line. That he was actually center right on many
Uh,
policies. Right. Don't forget
yeah,
workfare.
yeah,
Workfare
yeah,
was
yeah.
was a Clinton idea. Okay,
He
and
saved affirmative action though. Saved
well,
affirmative action.
yes, yes, the courts
Yeah,
also saved affirmative
yeah.
action. Okay,
Mend it, don't end it.
that's right.
That was
So
the thing.
the whole thing is, and the guy who actually was a champion of mending it, don't ending it, was his vice president, right? The guy who invented the internet.
Oh
Okay,
yeah, Mr.
but
Gore.
anyway,
Mr. Gore.
the point that I was going to make is Clinton was yielding during his administration to pressure from the right,
Yeah.
and that was represented by Newt Gingrich, who enjoyed really great power in Congress as Speaker for what only 2 years, right? And then
95. Yeah.
well, yeah, and then he he started stepping in it and tracking dog doo doo all over Congress and the
Yeah.
rest of the country, and so they burned him. Right, he
Yeah.
just went too far because he got so overexcited. Right, he got over exuberant and started spewing all kinds of right wing nonsense,
See.
and it got him burned. Right, so
Yeah.
and he is one of those smart guys. Don't forget,
Yeah.
he was a professor. Right.
Yeah. See, you're making me nostalgic for Newt Gingrich. I can't believe I just said that.
I have a
I can't.
Newt Gingrich dummy punching bag. You know, one of those punching
Yeah.
bags that comes back up because
Yeah.
it's
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's weighted. It has a weighted bottom.
Oh yeah. 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 I
Yeah.
can't believe I just said that because yeah, by comparison, Newt Gingrich is he's more reasonable than Donald Trump.
Well, he was a rational politician, even if you don't like his value scale,
Yeah.
right? It was at least worked the logic of the direction of his movement, right? And the
Yeah.
kinds of incremental steps that he was taking to change the way that government spent its funds, right?
Yeah.
And all that, was understandable. Okay,
Yeah.
now you just have knee jerk responses to one guy's really I got to say it, insane propositions.
Well,
Okay,
they don't make sense. He wants Greenland, and he's going to start talking about Greenland just to get people off track. But the New York Times did a thing saying that behind his Greenland ploy, he wants to give all the Greenlanders, and there's less than 100,000 Greenlanders. He
yeah,
wants to give them like 10,000 each. It's going to be a boondoggle, but hey, if you're a Greenlander eating on seal stew, living off seal stew, you're thinking, hey, I'm getting $10,000 from Mr. America, Captain America.
the way to fight back is to educate the Greenlanders about how valuable their raw materials are,
Greenland, yeah,
and that they know so that they understand fully that they actually have a bargaining leverage
they have
that
more.
that-
Yeah, they have
yeah,
more leverage. Yeah,
and especially when Vance and the other cronies
yeah,
keep on firing people in the military because the military is contradicting the way that they're saying we're at risk because the Russians are sailing past the northern edge of Greenland on a regular basis, and we need to guard against that. Okay, so that's understandable. They need a base. The interesting thing is that that's a space base. It's not a naval base. It's not an air
yeah,
force base. It's a space base, right?
yeah.
So
Well, we are. Russia is the enemy there, but we are chummier now with Russia because of the bromance between Trump and Putin. And
Well, it's really
the
a one way. It's really a one-way bromance, right? I mean, it's
yeah.
not. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Putin
It,
is not.
this is the
He's not
unrequited.
enamored. He's
This
not
is the
enamored with it.
this is the unrequited love of Donald Trump.
Yeah,
You know,
I.
unrequited love.
Yeah.
But the
Uh,
real enemy though is President Xi in China,
oh yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
or not the real, but the emerging enemy. And in some ways, when Biden and Xi were meeting, that was a good relationship. We got the chips deal, which was actually pretty good for the United States, and now that's being dismantled, and now China is, and then well, China is calling Trump's bluff. It's a real poker game.
Oh yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
raise 25, I raise
Yeah.
45,
No,
you
you know
raise
what I
40.
love about this? The one thing that I like about the trade war
Yeah.
is that it hurts Musk really bad.
Oh yeah, Musk is.
'Cause his secondary market, right? Second to
Yeah.
the U.S. is China for selling his cars. That's over, okay.
Yeah.
And the EU is now opening their markets to Chinese electric vehicles, the Chinese
Oh
EVs, man. They
yeah.
just did that 2 days ago. So
Well, I mean, the thing is, there's more than one partner out there, and if the United States went
and the
back,
Chinese got a better product. Their
they
batteries,
are better. Yeah.
their batteries and their chip systems have surpassed what's in the Teslas. So there.
Yeah. And I just, I'm just wondering when people are going to see, November, December 2024, we were a little better off then than we are now. And the
We're
difference
better off
is,
economically, are you saying, or what?
yeah, I think compared to where we are now, I mean, we're going to be facing tariffs over the next 4 months,
Sure.
three, four
Yeah,
months.
but it's not just economics. I thought you were going to go say we were way better off in terms of our relationship with
Oh,
other
yeah,
countries.
we
You
were
know,
better off with other countries, with better off with our relationship with China. Russia was where it should be, and Donald Trump loves Russia though. So Russia was always the enemy. She was actually more of a friend than not, although adversarial.
yeah,
But they own a lot of paper here in the U.S.
no
and they
kidding.
and they also own a lot of land in the U.S.
Who holds the most dollars?
Yeah, well, that's the thing that the Chinese can do a lot of stuff.
Well, we
Just
keep buying
that,
stuff, man. We keep buying their stuff. I mean, what is Walmart? What is Walmart and Best Buy? What are they doing right now? I mean, they're scrambling like hell
yeah.
to try to figure out where they're going to source their stuff.
If you took off everything on your body now that was made in China, you'd be a naked man right now. I mean that is a ridiculous thing. It,
Unfortunately, you're absolutely right because I
it,
was when you said that, I was just thinking, where do we get? What's my brand name on my underwear?
yeah.
But.
Yeah, or sometimes I have one of my favorite jackets is from Bangladesh.
Sure,
Uh,
sure. Well,
let's see.
sometimes a couple of my favorite jackets are from the Philippines.
Yeah, some
One of my
some.
one of my backpacks, well, really
Yeah,
well made backpack, is from the Philippines.
let's see this jacket here.
You
This
know,
I mean they're
uh,
all
I
exported,
think
but
fanny packs will soon be back in, and I got fanny packs. We got when the last time we were in the Philippines, we bought Filipino made fanny packs, and they're really
fanny
excellent.
they're back
Well,
in. Fanny packs are
I
back in.
know, no, I'm saying that they're going to come back in.
Oh,
I'm
they're
making
gonna.
that up. I'm making that up, but
All
they'll
right,
come back in.
now here's a shirt made in America.
Whoa,
Yes, made in
what?
America.
What brand is it?
This is a mizzen main shirt. Made in America. Sometimes it says styled in America, made in China. But no, this is made in America.
Wow,
Yeah, that's why it costs so much.
Mizzen,
Mizzen.
Mizzen.
Mizzen Maine. Mizzen Maine.
Well,
Mizzen
see,
dash
that doesn't
Maine.
make sense, right? Those are two masts. There's a main mast and there's a mizzen mast. The mizzen is
Ah.
is a secondary mast, and so
Oh, they're in the boats. They're in the boats.
it's a sail. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
it's a
sailing.
sailing thing.
Yeah,
Sailing thing.
it's
So
a parts
Mizzen
parts of parts of a goddamn boat, man.
Mizzen plus main, they call it.
Yeah.
And then here, this is. I happen to be in my closet, so I can do this experiment here.
Well, it's not
And
mizzen main; it's mizzen and main.
Mizzen and main, yeah,
Okay, that's cool.
yeah.
That makes sense.
Now
That would
here,
be a two-masted boat.
now here's a pair of pants, and uh, it says you're too fat. Oh, oh no, these only these are here. They're still
Where are you
these are
getting
my.
these things? Where are you acquiring these?
Uh, I don't know. I bought them, and then I just then I like
Where were you when you bought them? I mean, are you just
I was
a
here.
compulsive?
No, but I just the clothes I don't wear, I'll just stack them up and say, "Oh, I'll get to them," and then I don't get to them, and then but they're made. The shirts are made in America, and
Wow,
but a lot are
I want
made
to check
in
it out. I'm
a
gonna
lot
check
of
it out.
a lot are made in a lot of stuff. Let's see, Bangladesh, a big one,
Sure.
Singapore, Malaysia,
Yeah, Malaysia, quite a
Thailand,
few.
the little dragons.
Oh, I
Hey,
actually have had suits made in India,
yeah, and
sports jackets made in India.
yeah, and that see. So if you look at where all your goods are coming, and shoes, all the shoes are Chinese. I always think about like the fake shoes, the
And
fake
yeah,
leather,
for dress shoes, I get Italian, Brazilian, uh,
Brazilian.
also.
I go
Right.
the vegan shoes are all Chinese, and then I get these barefoot shoes. I think they're made in China. So anyway, it's weird. I mean, it's going to affect the consumer if this doesn't change. Do you think we're going to have a change? Do you think Donald Trump is going to wake up one day and say, I was wrong. I was wrong. I hate the fact that I'm doing this to people. Now, you think I
Uh,
was wrong? I do
uh,
not. I do not like.
no, I think you're going to have to revisit the word egomaniac, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, and
That
you're not
would
gonna.
describe.
That's really dubious
That would describe.
possibility, but
Yeah.
well, we're way beyond our 45-minute goal.
Yeah, we were going to try. Yeah, but we haven't solved the world's problems, Dan.
Well,
I
we
mean,
can't. First of all, we can't. If we want to solve the world's problems, we have to start addressing two major issues. One of them is continued gerrymandering and suppression of the vote.
yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
and the other one is the
Campaign finance.
campaign finance reform. And so, if you try to do it all at one time, and the Democratic attack is at the national level in Congress, and they start talking about campaign finance, it's not going to work. You have to
Hey,
start locally first. You have
yeah.
to in 26, we should be looking at local action to attack gerrymandering, and also get cities and maybe even states to start doing campaign finance restrictions.
Maybe they could do something to restrict individual donations because I mean I know there's loopholes because of Citizens United and the dark money, but when Elon Musk is seen as the mother's milk of Republican politics, you know that's a sad day because that's the only reason that gives him power. Richest man in the world gives tons of money to the Republicans and to Trump, and it's a reason why he's got a seat at the table and not me or you. And so I think I think that those are good. How about these? We had hands off last week, and I suggested that maybe it's a model and maybe the spark for a real people power type movement in America. But I don't know if we I mean that happened in the Philippines. I don't know if we can have that here. What do you think?
Yeah, we could. It could happen here. It could happen anywhere. But you have to look at and how and why it happened in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And first of all, it took a long time to develop a coalition beyond the left, because the left had always been critical of Marcos, right,
Yeah.
over the 19 years that he remained in power. Um, but what changed was that by, let's say, 1979, or 1980 or so, it
Mhm.
was much broader coalition. It was now moderates, centrists, right, even some people on the right in the Philippines. and the Philippines is definitely further right than the United States. The United States is essentially a center right society. Okay,
Yeah.
and so the left and liberal issues have always been minority issues, even though we can win some elections and get some things done over a period of, let's say, a full two-term election, right? We got a lot done during the Kennedy to Johnson period, but it was because of the dynamics, and that's what I'm trying to pay attention to. That's why the people power movement happened in the Philippines.
Yeah.
There's a long term in development, and then there was the dynamics, right, where clearly corruption was at the core, right? Uh,
Well, there's a lot of corruption here in America now,
exactly,
and
and
when
so,
people see and realize the amount of corruption,
yes,
like just this week, this idea that Trump wants to buy federal buildings and then lease them back and
right,
make money. He wants to sell them to his buddies for less and have them flip them. I mean that's pretty outrageous. Uh, I mean, the corruption level of this administration just to be on the grift and to sell everything. And look who's benefiting. I mean, how about the whole the Trump dump? In terms of you know the stock market's tanking. He says it's a good time to buy. Was there insider trading? Was he like giving a signal to people that someone had a picture of Charles Schwab, the Charles Schwab, who I've met, nice guy, Chuck Schwab. I know the guy who does his hair. Chuck Schwab, I met him a couple of times. He's at the White House, and apparently Trump was bragging how Schwab made a ton of money when the stock market went down. So the idea that was there insider trading among Republicans was when Trump put out that note that hey the stock market's bad, make some money, buy low, sell high, uh, and no one, the outrage is not there. The outrage is not there because oh yeah, that's Trump. That's what he does.
yeah. Once again, the general public doesn't care. They
Yeah,
don't pay close enough attention to that. When one of the big issues facing a corporatized American institution that was established by the Constitution was the attempt to privatize the U.S. Post Office. It
yeah,
is, in fact, a semi-privatized institution as it is now,
right.
but it is still primarily a government institution. Okay,
Mm.
and uh, people should have seen that attack. And that what did Congress do? They required the post office to fund their retirement program in advance. So they forced
Ah,
them to essentially have a fund, right, a retirement fund funded in advance. And it's I think the last time I looked, it was like $6 billion or something like that.
just for the postal workers.
Yes, yes. And
So
so by doing so, they're able to say, well, if it's underfunded and you're not meeting your funding goal to have the retirement benefits for postal workers funded in advance, okay, they say you're losing money. That's how
oh
they
oh
that's what
yeah
they did. And then they say you're losing money. You're not it's you people are incompetent and it's
yeah
terrible, you know? But I have never had a problem with the freaking mail being misdelivered. I mean once in the
yeah.
last 15 or 20 years, right? One
Yeah,
time, right?
but that pension thing is like how to lie with statistics, right?
It is.
Yeah,
It is. And
yeah,
it's the same thing. It's the same logic they use for Social Security.
yeah. Social
And
Security and hey, look, all the illogic of the trade balance, right? The bad
yeah,
equation,
yeah, well, there you
and
go.
and the realistic tariffs that are actually put on, and some aren't even triggered because some countries have a surplus. There's no
Yep,
trade imbalance.
yep.
And if Trump makes it worse by claiming a trade imbalance that hurts the United States. But look, there was Jim Clyburn on TV today saying, "Oh, those BMW plants that Trump wants out, they help people in South Carolina. like tens of thousands of people get jobs and are benefiting from BMWs made there in
Yeah,
South
their
Carolina.
Beamers made here, their Benzes made here, right? You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
obviously there's Toyotas assembled here.
people don't like globalism because
I mean,
what? Well, the thing is, like it's happened. You can't reverse it because if you do reverse it, it'll cost tons of money to get it back to where it was, and then it won't be as good as it was, before you try to undo this
well,
idea.
what about the really, really obviously stupid stuff? Let's bring it down to basic
Okay,
commodities,
well,
right?
let's really,
Let's just
yeah.
say coffee.
Oh
Coffee.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you slam tariffs on coffee. Are you going to encourage the growth of coffee somewhere in the United States or its
Yeah.
territories, right? Do we have an industry that's going to replace that one, right?
Or bananas, bananas.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
what are we gonna
Sure.
do with bananas?
Sure.
Don't eat bananas. How about our halo halo?
Yeah.
To buy macapuno, the coconut sport.
Macapuno,
Yeah,
macapuno, ube,
yeah.
ube.
Are you
We
gonna?
might be able to grow ube.
Yeah, I
We
think
might
you
be able
could.
to do ube.
Purple yam, add sugar. It won't be
Yeah.
as sweet. But how about the idea of those? You get halo halo, the coconut sport. The stringy coconut and the heavy syrup. When you pay $10 a jar for that, don't you feel ripped off?
Oh yeah, the little jar.
Yeah, I mean, but
Yeah.
that's like kind of like that. They put tariffs on
Yeah,
top of that.
the one jar would probably only make two or three,
Well, it depends
yeah,
on
two or three
how.
halos, you know.
It depends on how gluttonous you are, I guess. But I mean, but
Well, I
it's a
guess I'm a
yeah.
halo glutton.
You put it a lot. Yeah.
Well,
All right.
you can make them the Visayan way. The Visayan way is really hip.
Uh,
Yeah, they do it in a bowl rather than a
oh, in
glass.
the bowl. Yeah, the bowl, not in a little
Yeah, not in a
Sunday thing.
glass.
All
Yeah.
right. I have one more thing to bring up with you,
Oh
sir.
wow.
Yeah, just one more. It's just all right. So we're not going to solve this problem, and Trump is going to. Yeah, people aren't. I mentioned tariffs to people. I got outraged about tariffs. No one was outraged.
No,
No one was outraged.
no, they don't get it, man.
They say
They should be
tax.
outraged because it's a freaking tax.
Yeah, they say
Okay, they're anti-tax like crazy, but they don't want to tax the richest guys who could afford to pay the damn tax.
yeah, yeah,
You know, you could solve the Social Security insolvency problem
yeah.
literally overnight. Literally, if you just tax the billionaires, that's
Yeah.
all you got to do, man. You
All
know.
right, all right. That's a good point. But now we have to do breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking
This is
news.
from the New York Times. Immigration judge rules that Khalil
Yes.
can be deported, but legal hurdles remain. The decision by a judge in Louisiana is an early victory for Secretary of State Marco Rubio, but a broader challenge is still being heard in federal court in Newark. So the lead is an immigration judge in Louisiana found on Friday that the Trump administration could deport Mahmoud Khalil, granting the government an early victory in its efforts to crack down on pro Palestinian demonstrations on U.S. college campuses. So it's really a strike against immigrants, a strike against pro Palestinians, a strike against free speech, a strike against U.S. colleges. This is in one man. They're coming after all these different issues. The ruling is far from the final word, says the Times, on whether Mr. Khalil, a Columbia University graduate and legal permanent resident, will be deported. His lawyers will continue their fight in Louisiana and New Jersey, arguing that he has been targeted for constitutionally protected speech. The decision by Judge Jamie Coleman affirmed the extraordinary power that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has asserted to target any non citizen for deportation. Any non citizen. In Khalil's case, Mr. Rubio relied on a rarely cited law declaring that the Columbia graduate's presence in the U.S. was adverse to American foreign policy interests. Judge Comans found that the government had met the burden of evidence the law requires. Boy, that sounds like a real deep knee bend.
Well, that's exactly what Rubio and all those folks wanted.
Yeah, it's a
And
this
that's what
court.
you got to expect. It's Louisiana. It's right
Yeah,
next door to, guess what? Texas and Mississippi. You
yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, this is This court is without jurisdiction to entertain challenges to the validity of this law under the Constitution, Judge Comins said as she delivered her ruling. She denied requests from Mr. Khalil's lawyers, who had asked to cross examine or depose Mr. Rubio so that he could elaborate on his claims. At the end of the hearing, Mr. Khalil, who was otherwise silent, criticized the judge harshly. Khalil said, I would like to quote what you said last time, that there's nothing that's more important to this court than due process rights and fundamental fairness, he said. Clearly, what we witnessed today, neither of these principles were present today or in this whole process. This is exactly why the Trump administration has sent me to this court 1,000 miles away from my family. So
Okay. Well, okay. First of
that's,
all, it's Louisiana, Judge.
yeah.
That's one.
Mhm.
And secondly, the appellate court is the Fifth Circuit.
Yeah.
Fifth Circuit covers the three states that I just mentioned. Guess what? Texas, right?
Mhm.
Louisiana, and Mississippi.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know the kind of cases that come out of there.
Yep.
So do do the right wingers forum shop? Now does the general public understand forum shopping?
Yeah.
It's lawyers looking around for courts that might be more favorable to whatever their position is on a given case.
Right.
And that's what
And
they do. So they want to go. They want to have Texas cases come up because they know that the greater likelihood is they're going to get cases, decisions rather, that favor Trump,
yeah, out of the Fifth Circuit, they wouldn't put it in California because that's the Ninth Circuit, and that wouldn't be
which is kind
favorable.
of seen as the opposite of the Fifth
Yeah, and
Circuit. You know,
and this whole thing about judge shopping, and I heard the Trump administration's PR folks say, "Oh, accusing the Democrats and those on opponents of judge shopping." It gets to the point where everyone does all these negative things, and it only makes people less likely to
trust
vote,
government. They
trust
just
government,
yeah yeah.
and there goes our institutions down the drain.
But that's the way when you in an adversarial court system, in an adversarial system, that's exactly the kind of tactic that you're going to use, and it happens to be true that everybody does it. Everybody's going to try and find a more copacetic location to
So
file their cases.
how do you make it so that people just are, well, everyone wants to win, right? So
Well, first of
they'll
all,
bend the
the way
rules.
that the way that the right wingers and that Trump cheated on this instance is by getting the guy out of New Jersey.
Oh yeah, put
So,
them in Louisiana.
you want to get, I mean, that's the obvious first move they make is send them to freaking Louisiana, and they might as well send them out of country.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's
So,
so it's really obvious that they're engaging in forum shopping, which is exactly the kind of thing, as you said, that they just accused the Democrats of doing.
and that's always the argument, and you never hear anyone say whatever you say about me bounces off me. Whatever
Yeah,
you, what the heck?
I know you are, but what am I?
Yeah. Whatever you say about you bounces off me and goes back to you. I don't know. Whatever you say about me bounces off me, and
Uh,
I can't even get the
Well, the
joke
stuff
right.
is really childish. I mean,
Yeah,
I was disgusted when I saw Rubio try to defend what he had written in his
it,
memo.
it
I mean,
is.
he looked like a child. I mean,
It
he really did.
it is. This is high chair politics, right? From the high chair, and we're throwing. Let me throw this Gerber's at you. Ooh, yeah, a little sweet potato here at you. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I don't. I'm
Oh
trying to
man,
make sense. It's my country. It's our country. We want to make sense of it.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
uh,
So anyway, that thing's going to go up on appeal, and then it'll get rushed over to the Supreme Court. And so the guy, he'll probably be around for a while, but the Supreme Court may say that he's not subject to deportation. They may not. This is a closer case, but it really comes down to how seriously you can take Rubio's position that this guy being able to state what he's stating really threatens the
so
world. He
we
threatens the world order.
one man, too powerful. He could be Captain Marvel. Yeah. Well, this is
Oh
we
my God.
started talking about self deportation and
Yeah.
Sotomayor's statement on the Roberts ruling about Kilmar, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and we end with Khalil, Mahmoud Khalil. It's sad if you're a person of color, if you're an immigrant or have family members who are immigrants.
You don't even
Uh,
have to be a person of color. All you got to do is have key elements that can be identified by an algorithm, right? Key
yeah.
characteristics that can be identified by an algorithm. So if you have if you have a Spanish surname, or if
Oh
you're
yeah.
one of those weird British names that looks like a Chinese name, like Ping and
Yeah.
Lee and
Yeah.
stuff like that, you could actually be very susceptible. You're very vulnerable to being
Yeah.
algorithmed right into an FBI investigation. You
Oh,
know,
and then of course Filipinos with Spanish surnames.
sure, sure. And then we look chinky too
And
sometimes.
yeah, we have
Yeah.
that Asian look.
I've had
It's bad.
a cousin that actually referred to one of his daughters, oh, his only daughter, I think, as Chinky.
Chink,
So,
chink, chink.
yeah,
Which
like,
is, that's a slur, but
no kidding.
yeah,
Yeah, and he
that
was referring to the appearance of his own daughter.
yeah,
And oh, and by the way, he's half Chinese. The guy's half
yeah. So
Chinese.
he had Chinese in him. So uh, and like his wife, she had Chinese in her,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. So Dan, um, I wanted this to be up. Wednesday I went to a funeral, and there was some talk about the. I mean, it was sad, but I think the thing that I took away is that there was a sense that maybe I was the only one feeling this. That it was a good thing that my relative has passed on because he doesn't have to deal with this stuff anymore. Not that he dealt with this at all, but he doesn't have to live this like because all the stuff that we're experiencing now will have long term consequences, right?
Well, yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
gonna,
true. And so
it,
we're gonna it's going to affect people beyond our lifetimes
yeah,
easily. Okay,
yeah, yeah,
adversely because a lot of this stuff is going to be very difficult to correct if it's correctable at all. But I think that the United States may have lost its global prominence, and it may come down to even dollar. The dollar, just like English, right, is the
mhm,
language of business worldwide, right?
yeah.
The, the dollar is the language of finance worldwide. Okay, not any longer, man. Okay, this change could really signal a major shift. One of the things that kind of it ain't going to be the euro, so I don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
You
Maybe Donald Trump gets his wish and he brings us back to the 19th century, to 1870 to 1913. Philippines was a colony. Um, I know what my dad was. My dad was in the Philippines in 1913. When he comes in the 28, just in time for the Depression. This is where America was, and this is where we are again. I mean, it just seems like, well, we're not at the Depression
well,
stage.
they also had Cuba for a while.
Oh, Cuba, yeah, yeah, and you think all this stuff is weird with Trump talking about Greenland. They wanted to annex Cuba as a slave state. Well,
Hmm.
Franklin Pierce,
Hmm.
for in the 1850s, 1860s, he wanted to do that. So all
Yep.
this idea of let's do the easy expansion. They failed on Mexico, right? They had
Well,
the
yeah, because
they had the war.
yeah, they faked the treaty. The great treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo treaty, supposedly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They just found a priest that was willing to sign off, right, for the Mexican side.
yeah.
Yeah, that's another whole. That's a
That's another.
whole.
See, if we don't know history, then
Yeah,
it just seems all new. History is news again,
yeah,
and that's the thing about Filipino American history. The Philippines was in a war, or weren't they
yeah.
a colony? And
Well, what
so
about Seward's Folly?
oh, that's up north. That's Alaska.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Seward's Folly, and then we had Hawaii,
Oh,
and
Hawaii. Yeah.
and the reason they took Hawaii was because uh,
Dole,
guy
right?
named Hooker. A guy named
Oh,
Hooker established a plantation in Hawaii, and
yeah.
so they he asked for support, and they had a contingent of U.S. military land in Hawaii and claimed the sucker.
See, that's how it. I mean, to say Greenland couldn't be the United States, Trump wants it. It's easy. It's an easier win for him, but it will upset the apple cart. It will really
Well,
upset the apple
yeah.
cart. I mean,
Let's see what happens. Let's see what
yeah,
happens, man.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, the Canadians are sure as hell. I mean, this is really screwed up.
yeah.
I think a whole lot of Americans are just going to move to Canada.
Well, I don't know, but there's a lot of Filipinos in Canada already.
Oh yeah, there are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so I'll be going up there to do my shows in
where?
summer at
Which cities?
Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Vancouver.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
I'm doing a Canadian tour instead of a
From the middle to the west.
yeah
Yeah.
instead of doing my normal um, you know
So you're going to skip
fringes.
I call it Torontado.
Well, Toronto, the big city fringes aren't as good as the smaller
Oh,
city.
really?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
The Canadian fringes are big, big. The small ones, Edmonton, Winnipeg. But Dan, I was talking about my
Yeah, but
family. I was talking.
Vancouver's big.
Oh, Vancouver's big, but not their fringe isn't as big as that's a big city. But
Huge, man.
their fringe. I know. I am beautiful. Vancouver's
Yeah, it
beautiful
is.
because of the water.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and too
Yeah, and the
expensive.
parks. They got parks
Oh,
all
the
along the
parks.
water.
Yeah. Oh
You know.
man, Vancouver, beautiful.
Yeah, it really
And
is.
and that's not even as pretty as Victoria, which is
Yeah, that's true too.
a boat ride
That
away.
is. Well, Victoria, they kept their old world charm, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's really nice, and
Yeah.
it's a great boat road, very scenic. It's beautiful.
Yeah. All right. So Dan, I was going to talk about my family and the funeral, and
Go ahead.
it was good. It was good seeing a lot of those Filipinos that some of you grew up with. I
Yes.
mean,
Well,
or
no,
in the
Linda actually
community.
Linda did.
Yeah.
I knew I probably knew your female cousins,
Yeah.
tangentially, but
Yeah.
Linda actually lived in the same building.
Well, they were all there. They were all there.
Yeah,
And it was great to see them again. Because we have a kind of family where we only
sure.
see each
Weddings,
other.
christenings,
Yeah.
funerals.
Funerals. Yeah. Weddings, christenings. That we're WCF Filipinos. Weddings,
WCF.
christenings, and funerals.
That's we're all kind of there, man. I mean, we're all there,
WCFs.
and unfortunately, you and I are in the age bracket where we're going to the F part too frequently.
I know we're being f too much, and but it's I mean it's sad because I had to introduce myself to the new generation
Oh, sure.
and take out my iPhone and say,
You mean
okay, here.
they don't watch us? What?
I know. I said they should be watching on YouTube. No, so they have. I took my iPhone, so they knew that I was in the 21st century. And I said, okay, you talk to the phone, say who you are and how I'm related to you, and I will keep this in my phone, and I will know exactly who you are. And we got all sorts of because my cousins, my female cousins, they all had grandchildren.
Yeah, sure.
One has six grandchildren, and the
Woohoo!
grandchildren are having children. Well, actually, yeah, one had what? Yeah, one had her children. She had her three children, and her three children are having their grandchildren. So she's got six. I don't have one. Not that I'm looking for them. I mean, I'm not saying I need grandchildren. It's enough to say that when I have a picture, I take a picture with my sister. I say, "Here's a sister with me and my grandma," and then
Right on.
that gets her. That gets her.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I knew.
You have grandchildren, right?
Nope, nope.
No,
Not,
no grandchildren.
not that I know of.
No, wow.
Uh,
It's I mean it's all right to have, but I know my sister, her life is wrecked. Not wrecked, but she has one grandchild and she goes crazy over it.
we well we kind of adopt our cousins' kids.
Oh, that's good.
We
That's
have
good.
we have two sets. One set is on my side and another set is on Linda's side, and they've got young kids, and we've seen once one set grow into adulthood already.
Wow.
So yeah,
They're
yeah.
gonna have you're gonna have great grandkids. Well, that's
Well,
good.
yeah,
That's good when
yeah.
they're not yours.
In fact, I'm going to call one of them shortly because they're contractors. They're federal contractor.
Oh, good,
And
good.
so I've been checking on how they're doing.
Are they
Given
dodging?
the Doge
Yeah,
activities, you know,
dodging the Doge.
that stuff is criminal. And the thing that I want to leave you with is this:
Yeah.
do the Democrats have what it takes to penalize the Republicans for their criminal behavior? Okay. We're
Mm.
talking about people absolutely violating the Constitution, right?
Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
and so they gotta be they have to be put on trial at the very least. Okay.
Uh huh.
I don't know if the courts will uphold their being imprisoned, but they have committed serious crimes against the society at large. And part of what disgusts me about this situation is, once again, the general public doesn't understand that.
They
They
don't
don't
understand.
understand
Yeah.
the severity of the breach of due process, right?
They don't understand, and like you said, they don't care. And the other thing about, I think you don't have to be smart enough
No, you
to
don't.
care, but they allow for the jargon to kind of spook them, and they don't, and they don't think it's well, and they have an inordinate amount of trust for Donald Trump,
Right,
and
right.
that oh he's the president, he can't screw us, he can't oh yeah he can't. I think
Well,
the fact
he not only he is.
he
He's
is, well, that's
actually
the
hurting
thing,
them. And
that's the thing.
he hurt them the first time around.
Yeah,
They were
well
damaged by the first term.
that's the thing. He's not only going after people who voted for him, but he's going after people who didn't vote for him. So he has achieved one thing that most politicians in this day and age have yet to achieve, and that is a sense of unity. He is unified the American public. We are all getting it
Yeah, unfortunately,
from Donald
yeah,
Trump.
we're all getting very much abused.
Yeah.
But the saddest part is that perhaps even a majority of people who are suffering that abuse don't recognize it. They
I don't know.
actually don't recognize it. You
They
know,
think they're doing okay. They think, hey, we're fine.
yeah.
We're fine.
Well, they think he's representing them. They think he's fighting for them. Literally, they think he's fighting for them, just because he says so.
You're such a naysayer, Dan. You're
Yeah.
such a naysayer. He's our president. He's our president. Such a
Yeah, well,
naysayer.
a lot of people are. I mean, Linda and I have made decisions recently that were in anticipation of the impact, the
Mm,
adverse impact that Trump's actions, including the tariffs, right, were going to have. Okay, and I'm talking about the system generally, as
yeah,
well as what it happens to us in our income bracket,
yeah.
and where we live geographically. Okay,
Mm,
and so I got everything that I thought needed to be done as defensive measures. Okay, so now we can try and look at things with a little bit more sense of security, a greater sense of security. I don't think that most other Americans have done that.
oh,
You
I know that.
know,
Well, a sense of security in a world of uncertainty. That's
and people who are actually manipulating the system directly against your interests.
oh yeah, yeah,
So people are losing their social security, right? The people are they're going to stick an algorithm on all of our IRS. You know, the IRS made a deal, right? They're
Yeah.
sharing their stuff with DHS, with Homeland.
Yeah.
And so if they put an algorithm on it, and of course that's what Doge does, with great adverse effect, right? They make mistakes left and right, and
Oh yeah.
they get cut tens of thousands of people. They send out generic emails and letters that say you're being terminated because your performance level was bad,
Yeah.
and there's no such review. There's no writing, there's nothing that supports it.
Yeah.
And so those are all illegal firings. Those are
Yeah.
all illegal firings. These are
Yeah.
all, arguable in court and by class action, and they are going to win. Okay. I want those cases to go up to this SCOTUS. I want this SCOTUS to say, no, those firings were legitimate. I want them to be able to say that to the people of the United States and have the people of the United States say, well, that's fair.
Yeah.
SCOTUS has spoken, that's fair. That's what I want them to do. They really don't understand how badly they're being affected, right?
Yeah.
They're yeah. Well, how does due
Well,
process? I don't get charged with crimes, so
yeah.
due process is not something I need to worry about.
Yes.
Okay.
Due process. Is it due? I don't know anything. Is it due process?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm all natural. No process
Well,
people.
but see, you're brown and
Yeah.
and you got a Spanish last name. You get doo process. You don't get
Oh. Oh.
you got
Double D.
double
Yeah.
doo process.
Dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I don't know what's going to happen. You cross your fingers and hope that there will be some sanity. But when you cry for when they knock on your door and it's your turn to go through the double secret probation, as they call it,
Yeah.
you know, who's going to come help? You
Yep.
know, that's the sad thing about it. I mean, people in America are thinking about it now. Or have to if you're an immigrant, or even if you're not. I mean, that 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 case with Kilmar, they
Yeah.
can go after anybody. Send you to a Salvador prison.
Yeah. Yep. You better move fast if they start moving on you. I wonder if it would have been at all possible for these people if they had the name and number of a lawyer right in their hand, if they could have stopped that process.
A couple of the planes were stopped because some some people had lawyers
There we go.
and they were able to get off the plane. But
I got a couple on speed dial, man. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah, that's the thing. Well, Dan, thanks again
and
for
luckily
put.
for me, they were both my former students, so I have a good positive relationship with them.
Yeah,
And one
gave
of
him
one of them is a very successful criminal defense counselor.
gave them all A's, huh? That's good. That's good.
Actually, this one guy, yeah, he did get A's. He did get A's, but I
Good,
had
good.
to help him. I had to help him because he was the victim of feminist prejudice against him from
Ah,
another
feminist. Oh,
professor.
yeah, I know
Yeah,
what
from
feminist
another
prejudice is.
professor. Yeah,
I know
she was not real happy about men of color.
feminist. I know about that. Yeah. Dan, thank you very much.
Yeah,
It's
we
good to
went
see
way over
you.
time again. We
I
got
know,
to
but
stop doing that, man. But this
we
was a
put
good one. It was serious.
yeah, and we kept
I,
the
I hope
insults
that
and
people start getting the message. It's you better be prepared.
yeah,
If all of the statistics about people not having savings and all that are real, we could be looking at a really serious economic problem, not just in terms of tariffs and trade and all that, but I'm talking about personal local economics. We could talk
really,
about
man.
small businesses closing down again, just like COVID. Some have already done it. Some have already closed down because
Yeah,
of the tariffs. They were
yeah,
recovering from COVID, and then now they've got 70% of some places like the games stores,
yeah,
right? What 100, nearly 100% of their merchandise comes from Asia.
yeah. Well,
And
yeah,
and 80 or 90% of it comes from China, just China. Holy! moly, man.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. It's we don't know where this is going to go. We can,
Oh, well,
but this is because of the isolationist, protectionist ideas and fantasies of one man,
yeah,
Donald John Trump.
yeah.
And where's the other side? Where the checks and balances? Where are the other more rational people? I
Well,
don't know.
well, unfortunately, it comes down to the vote. It comes down to putting pressure, on our congressional representatives, and then it comes down to the vote in 26.
Yeah.
And it's slow, right? And we want to build up the coalition. Uh, we want to turn out the vote, especially for younger people.
Mhm.
And that's become problematic because so many younger people, particularly white men, right,
Turned off,
are yeah, and
or they're going right, or going
they're,
right
they're
wing.
they're going right. They're
Yeah.
going right. A lot of them are going right, and it's sad to see, but especially when they're college educated, they still make those kinds of choices.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't matter how much education you get. I mean, although it does matter how much money you have. Like Bill Ackman, the billionaire,
Yeah,
on Wednesday after the crash, he said, "Oh, it looks like we're going to have to prepare yourself for nuclear winter." And then the bond market reversal came, where Trump put the the 90, yeah,
suspended. Yeah, the tariffs for 90 days.
and then it's, oh yeah, he's back on track. And Ackman's the guy who's on the Harvard board, Harvard alum, on the Harvard board, billionaire. I mean, it's guys like that who they have the wherewithal to protect themselves and give them the security
You got it.
for all the whiplashing that we're getting, and the rest of us just have to like keep, you know,
You know.
going back and forth.
No,
Uh, anyway,
it's bad. It's bad. I've been, one of my barometers is used cars. I think I mentioned that to
oh
you.
yeah, it's going to go up,
Yeah,
right?
and it already has. The car listers like Car Gurus and Edmunds and all that.
Mhm.
They're already showing that used cars, even cars out to like 15 years old, are now listed as overpriced on their own sites. They
Oh,
gauge based on the market values, right?
yeah,
And whether or not a car is a good deal, a fair deal, or overpriced. And I opened up a couple of pages. Every single car was overpriced, man.
yeah. Keep your 10-year-old Toyota.
Yep. Let me
I
see.
mean,
How old is ours now? Yeah, it's
I
not.
was I was I was gonna get. I was thinking about something newer, but now I'm thinking, no, everything's gonna be at least 10,000 more, 10,
Yeah,
15,000, maybe.
I thought you brought a more recent Prius.
No, I'm still like 10 years, 10 years now.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
well, all right.
All
So,
right, man.
Dan, listen, take care. We'll be in touch. There he goes, my friend Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethnic
Peace
Studies,
out.
San Francisco State University. Ah, I'm telling you, Dan. When I went to this funeral, they were the early Filipinos were there, meaning the sons and daughters of the early Filipinos who came here in the 20s and 30s, and they were all like talking about where they lived, and out in San Francisco on Pierce Street, and the old Fillmore, some out in the avenues later, but it was a nostalgic time. And then something to see how we've all done, right? We did all right. A lot of them weren't, you know, there was no high tech boom for them, maybe for their kids, but some were, just they were work, post office, they worked, they improved on their lives by just they did better than their parents, right? Who came as I don't know My father was just a cook, and then their kids, and then their grandkids, seeing the generations there, and it's a shame that sometimes we only see our families at as I was telling Dan, WCF, weddings, Christians, and funerals, and sometimes too many F's. We got too many F's, not enough W's, and certain not enough C's. Got to get the christenings in there. Anyway, but it was good. And then while it's sad, you know, there was no body. I mean, usually there's a coffin and people, they pay their respect. There was only an urn and there were ashes. And I kept thinking, Emil, they're ashes. Don't sneeze, Emil. Don't sneeze. Don't sneeze. I didn't sneeze. I didn't sneeze. But I was ready with an excuse. Oh, my allergies. I was ready to pay. I was ready to apologize to the families when they have them like that. But no, it was really cool to be together. And then, of course, everyone says we got to get together again the next time, and it shouldn't be an F. It should be just a party instead of a WCF. It just should be a P, a party to get. And then that's why you have the party at the end, right? Because you're all there. And then we had a nice party. It was in San Mateo, a Filipino restaurant in San Mateo. Of course, very very little vegan food. Very little vegan food. But it wasn't. You don't go there for the food. You go there for just to be with the relatives. And it was great to see the relatives and the friends. It was sad and happy at the end, and that's why I haven't been here the last couple of days. It was sad. I mean, happy, it's sad, and it makes you think about stuff. So it's always good to end the week with Dan because then we can play this and we can hit it up. Because I don't know what's going to happen over the weekend, but all the big immigration stuff happened today. Sad, unclear what's going to happen, the impact to us, but keep your heads down. I mean that's what they did in the 30s when they're forcing Filipinos to self-deport. Of course, no Filipinos self-deported, or few, because they were they they didn't want to go home back to the Philippines and admit that their coming to America was a failure. So a lot of them stayed here and they just endured the pain. I don't know what's going to happen to those who came and are, being targeted now for self deportation. Those who are put on the dead list. But that's sad. That's sad. Anyway, have yourselves a nice weekend. Have have yourselves a nice weekend. We like to end this with a little meditation. God, I haven't been in the mood for laughter yoga lately, but uh, yeah, laughter yoga. I have to. It's where you laugh intentionally, and and it's supposed to make you feel better. It's supposed to make you feel. It does. All right, 15 seconds laughter yoga. 15 seconds. 15, just 15. If you intentionally laugh, you feel better. So you go, eh, a cocktail, a laughter yoga cocktail, eh, eh, eh. uh, 15 seconds. See, did you feel good already? Just 15 seconds. It works. Laughter yoga. Try it for a minute. That makes you feel even better. And for those of you who didn't want laughter yoga, I feel good just laughing like that because it comes up from your stomach. It tightens up. Feels good. But really, loving kindness. That always, you throw out the love and it comes back. It comes back. Send it out, it comes back twofold. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time.